Today's story takes us into the smoke and fire of Richmond, April 1865. The Confederate capital is falling. Jefferson Davis and his cabinet are preparing to flee, but they aren't leaving empty-handed. Behind them, wagons creak under the weight of gold, silver, and coins, the last fortune of the dying Confederacy. That gold was loaded onto trains under the cover of night, and then it disappeared. Was it stolen? Was it buried? Or was the lost Confederate gold nothing more than rumor? What we do know is that this mystery has outlived the war itself, becoming one of the most enduring legends of American history. And tonight, we begin at the very moment when the South was collapsing, and a trainload of treasure began its journey into myth. Union troops pressing in, and a city in flames as warehouses and supplies are set ablaze to keep them from Northern hands. Amid the chaos, Jefferson Davis received urgent word. The government must evacuate at once. But it wasn't just people who had to be saved. It was money, the Confederacy's treasury. Barrels of coins, stacks of banknotes, and boxes of gold and silver ingots were hauled out of vaults, piled into wagons, and rushed to the train depot. Civilians watched wide-eyed as the wagons rolled past. Some whispered that the fortune was so vast it could rebuild the South after the war. Others claimed the government would use it to rally Confederate armies further south. No one knew the exact amount, but rumor alone gave it a near-mythical glow. In the smoke and confusion, the train departed Richmond. Not just a train, but a symbol of the Confederacy's last hope. Its wheels clattered into the night, carrying both treasure and secrets, while behind it, the once proud capital of the South burned. And so begins the trail of the Confederate gold, a trail that leads us into shadow, rumor, and one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of American history. Before we move forward, I'd like to pause for just a moment. This channel isn't about documentaries or dry dates. It's about keeping the voices and mysteries of history alive through storytelling. If you enjoy traveling back in time with me, consider subscribing and sharing these stories so together we can pass them on to the next generation. Now, let's return to our mystery. Once the Confederate treasury train pulled out of Richmond, its journey southward became as shadowy as it was desperate. Guarded by weary cavalrymen and followed by fleeing officials, the train rolled through the night, its contents known only to a handful of men. Its first destination was Danville, Virginia, hastily declared the last capital of the Confederacy. Here, Jefferson Davis tried to project confidence, issuing proclamations that the Southern cause still lived. But behind the speeches was the heavy reality. Wagons of gold and silver, closely watched, quietly dwindling. To keep soldiers from deserting, payments were made from the treasure. Silver dollars passed from officer to private, a coin here, a handful there. Each chest opened weakened the hoard, but without loyalty, the treasury itself meant nothing. Witnesses later swore that soldiers received coins directly from the wagons, while others claimed boxes were quietly diverted and never seen again. And then came the confusion. Some accounts describe wagons splitting off, rolling into side roads under armed escort. A few say barrels were hidden in the Virginia countryside, sealed and buried in haste. Others insist that the bulk of the gold continued south toward Georgia. Every retelling contradicts the last, and with every mile, the trail grew colder. One Union officer would later remark that chasing the Confederate gold was like chasing smoke. By the time federal troops closed in on Danville, the wagons were already in motion again, scattering into the backroads. The farther they went, the more the story unraveled. Part truth, part rumor, part whisper in the dark. It was in these frantic weeks that the legend of the lost Confederate gold was born. For while the war was nearly over, the mystery of the treasure was only beginning. By May of 1865, the Confederacy had crumbled. Jefferson Davis was a fugitive in Georgia. Confederate armies were surrendering, and Union forces swept across the South. But when Northern officers searched for the treasury that had left Richmond, they found only fragments. A few chests of coins, some scattered silver, nothing like the fortune that was whispered about. The gold had vanished. That void, that absence of answers, was fertile ground for legend. In Danville, whispers spread of wagons hurriedly buried under cover of darkness. Farmers claimed that Confederate soldiers came to their land with shovels, digging pits, hiding barrels that were never seen again. In Georgia, stories circulated of treasure sunk into rivers, guarded by secrecy and mud. The rumors multiplied like sparks from the fires of Richmond. A Confederate cavalryman later claimed he saw wagons peel off from the main train, heading into the back roads of North Carolina. Others said high-ranking officials had quietly helped themselves to portions of the treasure. Every story added another layer of mystery. And then there were the local tales. A farmer plowing up a few gold coins in a field, a stranger in a backwoods town suddenly flashing wealth he never had before. Some said this was proof the treasure had been scattered, broken up, siphoned off in pieces. Others believed these were only scraps, hints of a much larger hoard that still lay hidden. What began as a desperate attempt to preserve a treasury had transformed into folklore. The lost Confederate gold became a story Southerners told not just about wealth, but about loss and hope. It wasn't just missing money, it was the ghost of the Confederacy itself, wandering through rumor, waiting to be found. In the decades that followed, the missing gold refused to fade. If anything, it grew larger in imagination. Adventurers, fortune seekers, and even ex-Confederates themselves took up the hunt. Every scrap of rumor became a map. Every old soldier's tale became a clue. Some believed the gold was buried along the rail lines between Richmond and Danville. Others were convinced that barrels of coins were hidden in the hills of Georgia. In North Carolina, treasure hunters dug along rivers where legends claimed Confederate wagons had dumped their loads. Each dig, each expedition, was fueled by the same dream: to uncover the glittering remains of a lost fortune. But obsession rarely stops at gold alone. For many Southerners, the treasure was not just money, it was memory, a symbol of the Confederacy's unfinished story. Some believed the hoard was hidden away to finance a Southern resurgence that never came. Others spoke of secret societies, the mysterious Knights of the Golden Circle, guarding caches of Confederate wealth until the South could rise again. These tales bled into folklore. Families passed down stories of ancestors who had seen wagons vanish into the woods. Old maps with strange markings were tucked into Bibles, whispered to contain the location of hidden treasure. Men with shovels and lanterns prowled the night, digging in fields or near forgotten mills, certain that with just one more strike of the spade, they would be rich. And yet, every supposed clue led only to deeper mystery. Nothing definitive was ever found. Still, the search went on, decade after decade, because the legend itself was as powerful as any chest of coins. For those who sought it, the lost Confederate gold wasn't just treasure, it was a chance at redemption, a link to history, and the dream of holding in their hands the glittering ghost of the Confederacy. When the guns finally fell silent and the Confederacy ceased to exist, the Union had every reason to track down what remained of its enemy's wealth. Reports trickled in, inventories were drawn up, but the numbers didn't add up. Some coins were found, some silver captured, but never the grand fortune spoken of in whispers. Historians today point out that much of the treasury was probably spent on the run: payments to soldiers, bribes for safe passage, purchases of food and horses. All of these drained the coffers. To some researchers, the lost Confederate gold is less a mystery than a misunderstanding, inflated by rumor and the fog of war. And yet, that explanation never fully satisfies. Too many stories remain. Too many local legends refuse to die. In Virginia, families still claim their ancestors saw wagons veer off into the woods. In Georgia, rivers and mill ponds are said to hide barrels sunk long ago. In North Carolina, treasure hunters dig beneath old barns, guided by maps passed down like sacred relics. Modern adventurers have tried metal detectors, ground-penetrating radar, even sonar scans of rivers, all in pursuit of a glimmer of truth. None have found proof, but none have given up. Because the gold isn't just about coins and bars anymore. It's about the enduring mystery, the dream of discovery, and the idea that somewhere, beneath Southern soil or riverbed, lies a fortune tied to the very last heartbeat of the Confederacy. And maybe that's why the legend endures. The war ended, but the story of the Confederate gold never did. It lives on because mystery has a power facts cannot erase. Whether scattered in soldiers' pockets, buried under forgotten earth, or spent into nothingness, the lost Confederate gold continues to shine, not in banks or vaults, but in the imagination. And that is today's story. The the tale of a fortune that began in the burning streets of Richmond and disappeared into history, leaving behind only rumors, legends, and the endless search for answers. If you enjoyed this journey into one of the Civil War's great mysteries, stay with us. This channel is about keeping storytelling alive, so that the next generation doesn't just inherit dates and battles, but living tales of human struggle, hope, and legend. Subscribe, share, and join us again for the next story, because history is not just what happened, it's the stories we choose to remember.